Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. This guy right here, I'm Ray, and I'll be reviewing some recent and classic LitRPG audiobooks for you. Before we get into the show, I just want to say once again, I know this is not an easy time for everyone. Everybody is going through either economic hardships or health hardships or any other number of things. There may be marital stress or stress with children being at home. I just want to let you know you're all my prayers. I've been thinking about everybody. I've just been really wanting this thing to get over with. And my opinion on what is real, what isn't real, what matters in the world doesn't really matter at all. All I care about is that everybody out there is doing okay and they're safe and they're healthy. And that's my whole goal, is to kind of bring you some enjoyment and give you some ideas about what maybe you want to look at when it comes to the audiobook world today. So we're going to dig right in. Get ready, get set, because here it comes, pretty babies. Well, I bet you've all been wondering just exactly what book I'm going to start with this week. Well, wonder no more. I'm going to be doing PrimeVerse, Force Login. This is book 1 in the PrimeVerse series. It's written by, and I'm going to mess up this name, and forgive me, RK Belew. I think it's Belew. I can never remember when I listen to it how to pronounce certain names, and I'm horrible with this sort of stuff. So I'm really sorry if I have, and I'm certain that I've slaughtered your name, but I'm just going to call you RK from now on. This is narrated by an easy said name, Eric Jason Martin, with a book length of 10 hours and 41 minutes.
I guess. Blind facial recognition wasn't my forte. I'd have to wait until I could see my reflection somewhere. I spun around to look at my surroundings and gasped in wonder. A beautiful, tree-covered island surrounded by a sparkling ocean as far as the eye could see. The island didn't seem too big, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The brightest greens and the most vivid blues, as if someone had cranked up the saturation. Most of my life I had lived in the city. And when I say city, I mean slums. Towering gray buildings lined with dirty windows, overcrowded streets full of people and garbage. The most foliage I ever saw were weeds that sprouted up through cracks in the asphalt. I thought places like this only existed on a Microsoft desktop background. Sure, VR existed, but couldn't compare to this.
So I just want to say right off the bat, this is a book I was really excited to get. Here's a first-time author, never written anything else as far as I know, who puts out this book, and the thing practically explodes. It blows up in no time. I mean, it goes from being, hey, I put a book out to, I believe I'm going to be on the bestsellers list this week, and next, would you like some wine with it? So, it was really, really exciting to get a book like that, because you don't see it really often, like, even the great authors, like, you can go through. I don't think, like, James Hunter's first book blew up like this, or Dakota Crowd's, or Blaze Corvin's. I don't know. I mean, they may have, but I think they took a little bit longer to gain traction, and I think that RK is kind of building on the steam that others have burned up with their power, because if you just come out of the woods cold and never heard of LitRPG, I don't think the book would have done as well as it has, because you've already got this massive following, so people really want to get this book. Whereas before, the other people, they had to build up. So it's neat in one way, and it's kind of like, I understand why it's like this on the other. But either way, I was so curious about all the hype, and my inner greedy pig, as my Russian friends from LitRPG like to say, kind of directed me to check it out. So yes, the book is good, and it has some well-deserved praise. The premise is one in which the MC, his name's Hudson, is forced to go into a video game for life, permanently, for life, because he wins the lottery. And in this world, it's kind of like the lottery, if you ever read the old story, The Lottery, where when you win, you kind of lose because you get stoned to death. Like, one person a year wins, and then they get the rocks thrown at them until they die. And it's not a very good kind of lottery. It's not like the you won $500 million kind. It's you get killed. Thankfully, they don't just kill you. They upload your consciousness into a video game for you to exist in at least some capacity. So it's not so bad. Hudson doesn't have a choice. He can never log out, so he has to make the most of what he has. Now, the book really shines for me at the very beginning, at the tutorial phase of the story. It's here how you learn to play the game. We see Hudson develop his gaming style. Honestly, the story kind of starts to drift a little bit after Hudson acquires his treasure hunting class, after he makes his way through the tutorial. And that's because once we make it to civilization, we get some other characters, and these characters have some flaws, or at least kind of make flaws pop up as you go. The first is there is a character that I seriously cannot understand why they are not punched in the face on a daily basis. Probably on an hourly basis. I mean, honestly, if I was stuck in a video game and I had the option of coming back from death every time I died, I would have no qualms about laying the smackdown on somebody's ass if they were that annoying. I'd be like, I beat them to death, but you know what? They came back and they're all the better for it. Maybe they learned a lesson. And so, seriously, there's just this one character that you just want to choke. I mean, like literally, and I'm a nonviolent guy. I really am. I mean, when I was younger, I grew up in a neighborhood that you had to fight, or, you didn't fight anymore. And, so I can fight, and I have done it in the past, but I don't have that in me anymore. I mean, I don't kill things. I don't kill bugs and spiders, and I love insects. If you bite me, you get it. You hit me, I'll strike back. But I'm not a violent person. But this one character made me just want to choke them to death. Every time they came on to the screen, to the radio there, or what do you want to call it? Man, I'm beginning to sound like one of our presidential contenders. I can't remember half the stuff I'm talking about anymore. But I'm gonna counter that with it's late, I'm tired, and I'm still in pain from my fall. So I'm allowed to ramble just a little bit. Anyway, Hudson has a couple of companions that he befriends, and they're both pretty cool. And that sort of becomes an issue later in the story when, again, here's an issue that I had, is a linchpin character is suddenly taken off the board. And that happens a lot in certain stories where you'll have a character who is, and I always look at like the OP problem. If the character is overpowered and their presence in the story would imbalance what the MC, the main character, the protagonist, has to do, what do you do? Because you've got this one guy or this girl who can do whatever it is the MC can't. Well, you take him out of play. And that's kind of like what happens. There's this great character, this monk, and I take umbrage with this with anybody. It's not just RK. Try to figure out something else to do with that character. Make them struggle and fight something else, and that delays them from doing something. So just don't make them disappear, especially in the way that they did. I mean, I get it. This is about like spawn camping, and there's a lot of that happens in this book, where and for those of you not in the know, it's where you kind of like wait until somebody returns from death, and then you kill them again, boom, 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 as soon as you can, and then just make it happen over and again. So respawn camping or spawn camping or whatever you want to call it, and that's not just one character; that's numerous characters that this happens to, and so I think that taking away that one character who's really cool, it's Quack Chang Kane, and for those of you who don't know, David Carradine in Kung Fu, the original character that Bruce Lee was supposed to play on TV, but he got ripped off and David Carradine took over. Still love that show, part of my childhood. So you have this Kwai Chang Kane character who just kind of poofs into the wind. So it's kind of bad. And then there's also one other issue I have with the character is there's this leader of the tribe, so you'll know who it is immediately, who thinks more with his heart rather than his head, if you get what I mean, when it comes in regard to a specific character. So, there are some issues with the story, and I think that this is just, it's the first time writer that just kind of has some things happening, because I've had other people tell me, and I try not to read reviews or listen to it, but I do have people tell me I read this book and this is what happened, or this is what I liked about it. And I've had a couple people tell me that some of the characters aren't quite as fleshed out as they could be. And I think that goes into, again, first time writer syndrome, where you get it out there and maybe you don't know how to make anything more than two-dimensional. And that's fine. Your first book is never going to be perfect. And here I don't really have a problem with it because the book is kind of, and let me get to it, family friendly. Yeah, there are a couple things that is kind of indelicate, especially when it comes to the woman who's a tease. And I would just tell my kids if we were listening to this story together that she's just a really good kisser because you don't really get into a lot of detail on that. Now, aside from being eaten alive by zombies numerous times, that sort of thing. But for me and my family, what's a little bit of mutilation from zombies? It's not a lot. Hell, you grew up in this house, you better expect some zombie eating. You know what I mean? We are prepared for the zompocalypse. We're prepared for the zompocalypse, the robocalypse, the singularity. How about that? We're prepared for that. We are prepared for giant meteors, giant insects. The other thing we don't really do is floods. So if Noah doesn't get the message, we are screwed. But anyway, as I ramble on here again, I just want to say that basically that's just kind of how things are. It's a good family style book that you can listen to with everybody and enjoy it. And there's also some other really positive things, like things I don't want to give away, like the death maze. Okay, there's this death maze that the character, every time he dies, he falls into, and he's trying to solve this maze and figure it out. And I don't want to tell you what the end result is or what's at the end of the result of the maze. If it's solved, I don't want to tell you anything at all. And then how the impact of that maze extends upon the rest of the story. There's a lot of stuff going on. Now, again, like I say, there are a couple things, this is not mine. I kind of like, I exist in the moment when I watch a movie or watch, a TV show, or if I listen to a book or read a book. For example, if all the guy does is shoot arrows all day, I'm not going to question why doesn't he pick up a sword? Why is he stabbing people with arrows when they get close, when he could have a dagger on his belt? I don't care. I really don't. But again, a couple of the people I spoke to were like, all the guy did was throw rocks. He could pick up a stick. He can throw a spear. He can throw anything. He could, and spears, knives. You can throw those. Cats. Hell, a well-thrown cat can send an army into complete disarray. So never discount a well-thrown cat. Now, again, I don't advocate harming of animals, but you get the point. You can throw a couple other things. And like I said, for me, it wasn't that big a deal, but I know a couple of my friends, it did kind of make them say, what the heck? The thing I ask about is why Hudson doesn't really get into crafting, because the world is definitely made for that sort of thing. And, I think if you're a player who's stuck in a world forever, you're going to want to expand your knowledge and do some sort of crafting, whether it's cooking or fishing or sewing, leather making, whatever you want to call it, herbalism. You want to do that just to kind of give yourself some sort of benefits other than I can throw rocks really well. Hudson doesn't do that. So again, that was one of those questions. And again, it's going to sound like I'm beating up the story, and I'm not. I'm just kind of critiquing. I'm just trying to just say, here's where there were some issues that I found or other people told me about before I read this. And again, I read this and I didn't even pay attention to what I was told. I was like, after I came out of it, I thought, well, yeah, he does throw a lot of rocks and so on and so forth. But I didn't let that influence me because to me, like I said, I live in those moments. And the only thing that will really kick me out, and I've talked about it before, is like inconsistencies. Like they'll say a snake blinked. Snakes can't blink. Or they'll say, the poisonous spider. Spiders aren't poisonous, they're venomous. Or they'll say, they'll misspell a word, or maybe not misspell, but mispronounce. Like instead of saying melee, they say melee. That's for you, Liv L. Jackson, by the way. Just for you. Because after I did a little rant the other day about mispronunciations in a certain story, he's like, well, you realize right after you did that, you had another thing where you came up and you said the word melee instead of melee, and melee is the word. And he's right, I did. But I don't get paid to do that for a living, so I'm allowed to mispronounce words every so often. If I write and I screw it up, then it's on me. But I'm not a writer. Not a reader. I don't read these things for a living, and when I do, then you can complain about me mispronouncing stuff, okay? And so, like I say, but those are the things that take me out. So the writing was smooth, and you may not like certain characters. You have to admit that RK writes the characters well enough that you do like or dislike them. and they're meant to be disliked. Like the characters that you say, I just want to choke, there's reasons why. That's their character, and you want to be able to say, I want to choke them. So he manipulates you pretty well with the characterizations. You really feel who they are, and like I say, it's not like a in one way or another. You're in wholeheartedly. Either you really like this character or you want to stab him in the eye. And so, weak writing. Weak writing can't do that. It just can't. So he's a really good writer, in my opinion, and like I said, it flows. The book itself is about teamwork and overcoming spawn camping, like I said. And it's also about building a civilization from scratch. Blah, blah, blah. I can't talk anymore. It also does a lot with loyalty, featuring those who are loyal and dedicated as opposed to those who are not. So there's a lot of good themes going on in the story itself. The narration by Eric Martin is really good. And if you like him here, I would steer you over to another excellent series that he's worked on, S.L. Rowland's Sentence to Troll series. So if you listen to that, you may recognize him here. And I always like to do that if I can, just kind of steer you into something else. If I like a narrator, I'll say, hey, man, you might have, heard of him over there. Go try this out if you liked him here. And Martin does the story real justice. I think he elevates it a little bit too, because he knows the comedic beats. He knows, the way to infuse the emotion, the tenseness, and that sort of thing. So he does a really good job. And like I say, he gives everyone a distinctive voice. That's important. I never once went, who was that talking? I can't tell who that is. So that was a benefit. I really liked that a lot. Final score, and again, I've named a lot of stuff bad, and again, it's just me critiquing the story. More for RK if he's listening to this. I can say here's where I think things kind of went. The story is well written, well crafted. Like I say, there's a lot of really good parts to it. But there were a couple of things here, so I'm going to ding it a little bit, but I'm going to give it a 7.9 out of 10. And the book is doing well, so I don't think it matters what I give it. I could give it a 1, and it's still going to continue to do well. And I could give it a 10, and it's not going to make a difference. It's still going to do well because it has a really good fan base. But this is where I come in at. It's a 7.9. A couple of flaws hold it back. I'm hoping like books 2 and book 3, because he's getting book 2 out pretty quick. I know it's already on the shelves, so to speak, electronically. So if book 2 is better, it's going to be a really good series, because this universe, this world has a lot of potential. Oh, hey guys. I'm sorry, I forgot I was doing the show. I got so entranced by reading The Master Guide to Birding. It's just going to be great on audiobook. I can't wait for it. No. Nope. Can't lie. Do you know why I'm doing this? This is what's called a prop. And I'm just messing around with you all because I don't have Prop Guy to work with anymore. He has quit on me. He just doesn't do stuff anymore. Usually he would say, here's a book, and throw it at my head, or I'd grab one of these books off of my shelf back here. That's some of my RPGs that I have from Tabletop. And you can see there's a bunch of that stuff back there. And that's just like a little teeny section. A teeny weeny section of my RPGs. But today, the book is a prop because I'm going to be not reading. Damn it, Ray. Okay, I'm not reading. I'm reviewing Bibliomancer, The Wolfman Warlock, Book 1, by James Hunter and Dakota Kraut. It's narrated by Nick Padell and has a book length of 12 hours and 50 minutes.
There was something waiting for him behind this door. He knew it, and he knew that he had to enter. Still, Sam King lingered on the steps. His hands were sweaty. The suitcase was oddly heavy as he stared at the double doors of dark wood and frosted glass. Behind him, an engine purred, and tires crunched as his Uber driver pulled away, stranding him there with no other options, no escape. He licked his lips and glanced up. Anything to put off the inevitable for just a second longer. The house was a massive thing. 3 stories of gray brick, peaked gables, and gleaming, oversized windows, all trimmed in white marble. He hadn't seen the estate in more than a year, and after spending so much time locked away in his tiny dorm room, everything about this place felt excessive.
So this is what it's like, as Power Man 5000 says, when worlds collide. This is what it's like when worlds collide. I mean, if you ever heard the song, you know that's it. I nailed it, if you didn't. Okay, so anyway, when worlds collide. And I want to see Jupiter smash into Saturn, because that's right, it would not even be close as spectacular to the two biggest names of LitRPG coming together and putting together a tale that is penned of pure awesomeness. Okay, I mean, like Saturn and Jupiter smashing together would not carry half the impact that this book has. And I don't exaggerate. I'm just kind of downplaying stuff. Just a little bit. Okay, so anyway, but you get this combination of Juggernaut, James Hunter, and the ever-loving Dakota Crowd, which, it'll make people spill ice cream on their jeans. I hope I cleaned it up enough for YouTube. If you think about it, what I'm talking about, okay. Anyway, these two guys really put some work and thought into this story. This dynamic duo have combined their powers only for good. It's good because when I ever get a chance to collaborate, it will be for evil purposes. It will be the darkest book ever written. It'll make H.P. Lovecraft look like a children's writer. This is where I'm supposed to do my evil laugh. So wait. That didn't work. Yeah, that would be it. That would be how I do it. So if I collaborate, it's going to get ugly. But these two guys, they do it all for the power of good and love. So, the story simultaneously showcases their varied talents, because they are varied, and it also brings together their different and yet coherent senses of humor together perfectly. You're going to get an ass over tea kettle, and you're going to get lots of puns. This is, without a doubt, lightning in a bottle, and I think I actually enjoyed this more, maybe just a little bit more, than the first Completionist Chronicle book. That said, before I go any further, do you love me? Will you love me forever? Will you need me? Will you never leave me? Sorry. Meatloaf is my middle name. So before I go any further, I do want you to know that I would love to see this book collab kind of go in the other direction. And by that, I would like to see the amazing Dakota Kraut take up pen and work in James Hunter's Viridian Gate Online series. I think that would be utterly spectacular. I mean, just completely cool. Because Hunter is, and I say this, and it's funny because generally speaking, when he teams up with people, I can say he kind of is like this writing chameleon. You really don't feel his voice over the other person's, whether it's Aaron Crash or, I won't go. I'm just going to put it like this. You don't really feel him dominating. He contributes. And I would have a hard time picking out who did what in a book 90% of the time. But here, because they kind of play and bounce back and forth, you can totally see a lot of times, and I'm not saying it's in a negative way because it's still flawlessly done, where Hunter is speaking and where Dakota Crowd is speaking. So when James Hunter runs with it, you get certain things, and with Dakota Crowd, you get certain things. And, and maybe Hunter really boned up on some puns and is tricking me. But, like I said, I think this is like the first time I've been able to get a feel for him in a book, whereas usually he kind of keeps himself into the background of camouflage, and it's really good because it makes the book sound like it has one voice. And this does have one voice. I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying at all. It's really fantastic the way that they have interwoven these things together. They're parts of the story, because it doesn't feel bumpy or crazy or, out of place in any capacity. So, like I say, this is, oddly enough, probably a slightly superior story to the Completionist Chronicle Book 1. Just because of the way things go, I liked it a lot more. And I'm not saying it's better. I just enjoyed this one because I think I could get away with it, or they could get away with it, because the Completionist Chronicles have already been built up. So there was none of this like world building and things like that. It was already set. You knew what was going in. But there's also another reason why I think I like this book a lot, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So, I do think Dakota should pen like at least a one-off Viridian Gate Online story with James. So anyway, I sincerely hope that this isn't just a one-off. I know it says book one, but sometimes that's just what they say. But it was really good, and I would love to see Sam, the protagonist in this story, pop up in a regular series at some point, just to flaunt his jaunty locks at Joe, because he has amazing hair. Now, I will admit there was one point in this story I was a little bit confused on, and it may be me. So, comment below somewhere and let me know if I'm wrong. But I really thought that Joe and his crew were the first people to survive a night in the wilds back in book one in the Completionist Chronicles. So if that's my nit to pick, that's it. But it was sort of misleading because I really thought that was the case. And they got like certain awards and things for for surviving out there. And again, not to give away anything, but Sam does survive outside in the wilds first, and he is given respect and notification for it. So I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting or forgot. It has been a while since I read the Completionist Chronicles, and if that's the case, just set me straight. But I think that was the only thing I really had to kind of have an axe to grind about, other than the slightly misleading title, the Wolfman stuff. But I won't get into that because I was really expecting Lon Chaney Jr. stuff, and I know the Wolf people in the book, but again, well, I won't go into it. But yeah, it was a little misleading, a little sad. But I am kind of curious about how Sam and his crew, after the end of this book, will fare in the next book if they do another one, when it comes in regards to the Wolfman apocalypse that's happened, because they do sort of align themselves against the Mage College and the city itself, so to speak. And so, if you've read a Completion of Chronicles, and again, I'm not trying to spoil anything, you kind of have an idea of what happens with the Wolfmen. So I want to see how that lines up, because I gotta believe that Dakota has a plan and James have a plan to do something there, so they're not just treading water. Either way, I have to say this story is really fun. The fun just never stops. It just really doesn't. And it's one of the better books I've read in a long while. I can't recommend it more. Like I say, and these are two of my favorite authors. Clearly, if you want to know the truth of it, yes, I've written a story in both their anthologies, because I love Viridian Gate and I love Divine Dungeon. So, am I a super fan? Only God knows, because there are people out there that probably love them just as much as me. But I am definitely a fan 100% down the line of both of them. So this was a perfect melding in the coming together and confluence of all things great and amazing for me. And again, it was one of those books, I got it and I held off just because I wanted to savor the whole thing, the essence of the book, instead of just gobbling it up in one go. I wanted to put it back, and when I really needed the book, like right now, that I knew was never going to let me down, wasn't going to fail, it was only going to lift me up, I could have something to turn to. And of course, right after I took my header down the stairs, this was the first book I picked up. So it was really nice. I said, this is it. This is the time for this book, because I need it. Now, the key to this book, and I have to say this, and I alluded to this earlier, that makes this book so great, is that, and I honestly hate to say this too, the narration style actually fits the humor superbly. Why do I hate that? It's because Nick Padell is not going to be handling the Completionist contract. That is going to be Luke Daniels, and Luke Daniels is a great and amazing narrator, but Nick really just kind of clicked for me with this story. It kind of goes back to like listening to him do other things. I mean, he's come in and for me, he's either like a really hit or miss person. Either he has made 100% for a story, or he's not. And so, like, and again, this is no bang on him. Like, he took over after Jeff Hayes did the Super Sale and Superheroes, and he came in and did books 2 and 3, and with that book already being established, it was almost impossible for me to say, in any way, shape, or form, it was fair to judge him on his work, because I was basing it on what I totally loved the first book. And so to me, he didn't click quite as well as he could have with that material. Here, I mean, it's like, pow. As soon as he starts speaking, you can tell he's got the rhythm, the pattern, the patter, the whole concept. It just comes out of him, and he kills the narration in this book. And I really wish he had this contract for things going forward, because whether it's Divine Dungeon or it's Completionist Chronicles or something else that Dakota comes up with, if the other authors who had done other books in the past are no longer going to be doing that for him, then Padel really seems to catch his tone and his whole essence. Forgive me for naming the book. I didn't realize I did that until just now. The whole bit of what Dakota's about, because it's got his humor. He's got that down. He really plays this really, really well. So for me, Padel is a much better fit and is really solid as Sam. He just knocks us out of the park, and I'm so glad that even if it's just for this one book, that there is somebody out there who can do Dakota stuff and James stuff, justice. And I'm going to call it Dakota's because this is set in the Completionist Chronicles series. But for him, this book does everything that it was supposed to. The narration-wise, I should say, because it comes to life so much better. And I hope, and again, like I said, I don't look at reviews, so I don't know. I'm hoping that other people have felt the same way, because this just really, as soon as I started listening to it, I was like, oh man, and I didn't even pay attention to who it was. I didn't even, look on the cover of the book or anything like that when the thing comes up. And when it came up, I was like, Nick Padel. I'm like, whoa, that's Nick Padel. And he is killing this book. He is just nailing it. I really, really just didn't want it to stop. I mean, that's just how good it was. Did not want it to stop. And the ending is the most brilliantly funny screw you to Joe from the Completionist Chronicles that you could possibly ask for. Bar none. It was just hilarious. I was just like, that is so brilliant. And it was a perfect for a prequel ending. Okay. I mean, perfect. Because it ties in so well with the Completionist Chronicles. I mean, I really had to go back and say, I wonder if he had this idea in his head all along, because, Dakota is an outliner. And so, there are pantsers and there's outliners when it comes to writing, and he's an outliner. So I don't know. Did he have this detail in his head? Did he say, hey, James, I have this idea I want to flesh out? I don't know. But either way, these two guys need to do more together. And it's good to see like two different companies reaching out to one another and working together. But again, Dakota Kraut and James Hunter are really good friends in real life, in IRL, so to speak. And so it was just a natural thing for them to do together, is to, do a book like this. So I'm really, really glad this is out. It was just a great ride. 8.5 stars. Great book. Get ready for a Sabu Spotlight. That's right. Today is going to be Save Point Upload by Matthew Siege, narrated by Will M. Watt, Annie Ellicott, and Jeff Hayes, with a book length of 10 hours and 2 minutes.
Are you guys still watching? I called out. Because the damn suit is already broken. It wasn't my fault, but I can't hear anything out here. There was a shiver in the air just ahead of me. Before I could react, unseen hands had flipped the helmet's release and plucked it from my head. It fell at my feet. Incredible! gasped the shifting wobble of light. A moment later, a silver orb popped into being in its place. I guess I should have been surprised, but maybe my capacity for amazement had already been burnt out.
Are you talking to me? I should have been hidden from your sight.
Sure, I said, going with it. If I went down the is it speaking English or am I understanding a non-human language road, I don't think I'd ever recover. If you want to hide from me, you're going to have to do better than that.
So, in keeping with the apocalyptic theme due to the pandemic, I have for my Sound Booth Spotlight a little book called Save Point by Matthew Siege. Now, you may remember the last time I talked about Siege's One in the Head zombie APOC novel, I had a few issues. Some things just did not make sense to me with that book, and the book was more about income inequality than it was about zombies or the apocalypse, or at least that's how it felt to me. It kind of ran away with itself rather than fulfilling what it was promising. And like I said, it didn't do bad. It did kind of come back to it, but there was just this overwhelming repetition of, if only I wasn't poor, if only the rich didn't get away with everything. That kind of stuff took me out of the story, and it just made it not as enjoyable. Siege eschews his social commentary here in favor of just good old plain fun, as he should, and it works. It works so well. He lays out some nuggets early on so that if you are paying attention, you can see how the book will end. So you have to pay attention. It's kind of like the Blair Witch Project. Like the first time I ever watched Blair Witch, before I ever saw it, a friend of mine said, you have to pay attention to things they say early on, or the ending will make no sense whatsoever. And so, I listened to everything that was said, and, honestly, the story bored me. But I just wanted to get to the ending and see what the surprise was. And they had this story, and I'm sorry if it's a spoiler. If it's good, you don't want to know what goes on in the Blair Witch after 38 years of it being out, let me know, and you just can skip this part. But they say, there was this guy that would kill children in the basement, and he would have one face the wall while he killed the other. And so that was the thing you had to pay attention to. If you didn't pay attention to that, then you wouldn't have had a clue what the hell happened at the end of this. This one here, there is set up similar to that. They give you little hints and nuggets, all through the beginning of the book there, to tell you what's going to happen at the end. So it's not a shock as it comes about. You're kind of like, I'm expecting this to happen at this point, to be honest with you. So it was nice, because if you do the detective work, it pays off at the end. And I think the biggest indicator in the book, just like Blair Witch, comes from a question that the MC is asked after his abduction and prior to his going into the other world as a player. Now, the way this works is Adam, the MC, has cancer of the brain cancer. If fans of Joe versus the Volcano will remember Brain Cloud. So he's got this big tumor, and he's about to cack off and kick the bucket. And so he really doesn't have much fight left in him until they start to force him to do something. He's taken to this unnamed government agency's facility, where he is told that he is being forced to play in a game that aliens are making the human race play. He's got to dictate whether humanity will be wiped out, become slaves, or if they'll beat all odds and end up winning the game and become dominant players. Any of those things are possible, and anything in between. Adam is given literally no prep time to learn, and is just shoved into the game, over his head before he even realizes his feet are wet. I mean, he's like, "Hey, what am I doing? Whoa, I'm in the game." Even though he recognizes a couple players as he's going through, as they're cryogenically stored or frozen or however it is, he knows some people that are in there already. And I think that's where a lot of the fun comes from, is because we get to learn about the world, and that's the smart way to do it. I don't want to be told how this is. Show me the money, so to speak. Let me learn with the character of what your world's like, what your game is like, how it's set up, how it works, and then we can do that pretty well. It's not quite as crunchy as most people would like. I think it's fine. My rules, my regulations. It just has to be it just has to say I'm setting the game, and every so often show me the money, so to speak, and give me some crunch. Here's where I got hit. This is where I did this. But as long as they're using powers and it's game based, I don't care. So it's not quite as crunchy as maybe you would hope, but it is there and it does exist. So it's a pretty decently done game system. Adam is a compelling character. I do want to start off by saying that. And the struggles he has, such as like in the game, he earns a nemesis. He's targeted for execution. He also, because in the way it works is if you get killed, you do respawn, but you have a waiting period, and you're only in the game for so long anyway. And he has a clock hanging over his head because he's only going to live for so long. So he can only play for so long, then he's done. And when he gets into the other world, he's hale and hearty, he's healthy, so he's not suffering from like this horrible tumor up here about to burst open like a alien with John Hurt's chest. So he has all this pressure on him, and it just kind of keeps your attention. It's like a weed eater aimed at your crotch. It's pretty thrilling, Also, he also befriends his AI, which I guess is something that either most other players don't have or don't know about or can't get right away. And so, there's that going on, and then he runs into other humans, and that causes him some issues. So he doesn't have a lot of luck with the world itself because it keeps just coming at him. And no matter what he does, he kind of gets screwed one way or another each time, although he does figure things out and gets away with it as he goes through. But first steps are always horrible for him. Adam is a very compelling character. Like I said, he will keep you occupied. You won't regret him being there. He's really fun. And I keep going back and comparing him to the MC for, headshot, one in the head or whatever it is. And that guy just drove me crazy to a certain point. I was like, just do your zombie stuff and just go out there and do it and enjoy yourself. That's what you're supposed to be playing for. The game is supposed to be about enjoyment. Here's a guy who's terminally ill, and he's having the time of his life, basically. So it's a good turnaround, and that's what I was looking for in this zombie novel. Of his is, and again, the zombie novel is doing quite well for itself. I think he's got a third book coming out in the series soon, so it's not as if it's not a well written or not doing well because of bad writing or anything like that. It's doing pretty well for as far as I can tell. But it just wasn't up to the level that this book is. There's a lot of thought put into it, and I think it works so much better. And this is what I wanted with Killshot. I wanted that so bad. So the game world is neat. It's got quirky rules and alien competitors, and Adam's gameplay style really, really works here. And this is what I was looking for, like I say, with the other book. Excellent novel, start to finish. I can't wait for book 2 to come to Audible. The work by Sound Booth is like smooth jazz on a cool night. Will Watt, whose dulcet tones you may recognize from the Shadow Sons series, takes the lead and impresses once again. I really am coming to respect this cat that kind of hails from across the pond. He's come over here and is just killing. I mean, just killing. And he's not like a snuffity, fluffy, Anglo, whatever you want to call me. I mean, the guy is he just comes across as a down-to-earth. I'm just reading this story for you as best I can. And he does an amazing job of when he needs to, he totally vanishes his English accent. And then when he turns it on, it's even cooler because, that's a great English accent. I love listening to him do that, like in Shadow Son. So he is really impressive. He can read a story. Annie Ellicott lends her incomparable acting chops to the ladies' side of things. And I have to say that she absolutely stuns here. There are some characters who are so worn out that it's just sad, and you can hear her do that with her voice. Just there's exhaustion and mental fatigue, and just, I'm just tired. I can't go on anymore. That's all there. You can hear it, and that's tough. She's tough. She's tough. She makes Rosa Diaz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine seem like a grade school bully because she's that hardcore. I mean, Annie is a player. Jeff Hayes also pops up to add a little texture and spice to an already amazing job. This guy is the Richard Blaze, and since I started off, talking about him in a food reference with spice and stuff, I'm going to keep it with him being like one of the greatest all-time top chef people. Richard Blaze is an incredible chef, and Jeff is an incredible narrator. So when you hear him, the story is just going to pop all the more. So for me, this is probably, and since I've only read 2 books of of Matthews, this is the far superior series and book. And I think it was his first book that came out. I mean, this book just kills in comparison. And again, I don't know if it's because I was really wanting like a really good horror RPG book out, LitRPG book. And it wasn't quite a horror book. It was just kind of a zombie book, and zombies are horror, but I can put Bigfoot into a book, and it can be a Western. It doesn't make it a horror novel or supernatural novel at all. So just because it has this or that doesn't make it one thing exclusively. And in this case, this book, everything kind of fits together perfectly. It comes together. Enjoyed it immensely. And I really think that if you haven't read this book, you really want to. It's really good. And it even has kind of like tower overtones because you have to go up levels in this one thing. So if you like tower defense sort of stuff, or just climbing the towers, that's sort of there too. So, give that a shot. It's a really good book. 8.2 stars. Can't wait for the next one to come to Audible. And I really am sincere when I say that. Well, I'd like to thank you so very much, everybody. I do appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen. I do mean it very sincerely when I say I hope you're taking care of yourselves and your loved ones. If you want to support us in this trying time, you can like the LitRPG LitRPG Facebook page or the YouTube page, or just share and like this video. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed the show. Please leave comments or suggestions in the section below here, and feel free to tell me whatever you like, except for LaBelle Jackson. You can just suck it. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. So again, I just want to say thank you all for taking the time to listen to the show. Please, always, as I say, please leave a review for any book that you've listened to or read. Authors depend on reviews for their livelihood, and every review matters. Every single one. There's no such thing as a bad review. As long as you are honest and you can say, here's why I liked or did not like this book. To just say I didn't like it or just say I like it doesn't help anybody, and it doesn't do much good for the authors. But if you can say I didn't like it because, this is where I had my problems, or I loved it because, then they're going to do great. So for the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast, I'm Ray. Keep listening.